back to Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. 22 minutes past the hour. I'm your host, Olga Peters, and welcome back to my guest, Chris Mays from The Reformer. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
And I also want listeners to know that this segment of Green Mountain Mornings is being filmed by Brattleboro Community Television. It will be up online later today at Brattleboro.tv. And broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. So, Chris, there was a DRB meeting was it last week?
Yeah, it was on Wednesday.
And I should know that I was doing the Brattleboro Select Board Forum,
Yeah.
Candidates Forum. And there were two projects that were discussed. Can we start with the Wyndham-Windsor Housing Trust?
Yeah, it was a really late meeting. I didn't eat dinner beforehand, so it was...
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I wasn't
Rookie
expecting it to go
mistake.
that long, but I should have. These are two pretty big projects. The Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust proposed a 5-story building on Flat Street by the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, in that kind of empty lot?
Yeah.
So not the Sinnell building next door?
No,
Empty lot. Oh, so
it's a
brand
new building.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it would be right behind Peter Haven's.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it used to be an auto body business, and then it was demolished
Okay.
in the early 2000s, I believe.
Okay, I have a vague memory
Yeah.
of something there. And what were some of the feedback to this project?
Well, some people, were kind of upset that their view was going to be obstructed. Some of the people who own buildings where they have tenants and
Fair enough.
the same people were kind of concerned, the landlords were concerned that this project might take away some of their business because there would be, it might be a cheaper option. One of the biggest concerns had to do with commercial space the housing trust wants in the lower floor, the first floor.
So the upper
lobby.
floors would be housing, and then there would be commercial space. So
Yeah.
a mixed-use building.
Yeah.
Okay.
The commercial space, some of the people who had concerns were worried that since the housing trust would likely be taxed at a lower rate than normal businesses, it was kind of giving them an unfair advantage to renting that space out.
Fair point.
And then Dick DeGray, former select board member, he raised concerns about since the housing trust plans to have an office for counselors through youth services. He worried about putting a vulnerable population on Flat Street, where he says there's a lot of drug activity and criminal activity. He said. So yeah, there was a lot going on there.
A lot going on. And did the DRB have any responses to any of these concerns, or were they really just listening?
Well, they said the only way they could bar a business was if it was the strip club.
So in other words, there has to be something in the town plan or
They're strictly on zoning, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So they listen to everybody's concerns, but the things they put into the permit conditions had to do with storm water runoff.
Mm-hmm.
They said there shouldn't be an increase with this project. They also said mechanical equipment should be screened properly to mitigate some of the sound and and aesthetics. So yeah, they approved the project.
Okay. What's the project's next step then?
Well, I just saw an advertisement in our paper. They're putting it out to bid, so they're looking for contractors to build it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they wanted to start this summer or early autumn.
Wow. And so were folks from the Wyndham-Windsor Housing Trust there?
Yes.
Did they respond to any of the community members' concerns?
I think they just listened.
Okay.
Yeah. They said that they were going to work with people like the Boys and Girls Club and other neighbors who were worried about the stormwater issues. And also they said that it wouldn't be nearby property owners' problems if people had issues with exhaust and noise from the other buildings, the
Right.
housing trust would take care of that.
Well, the one concern I heard that um, I would just point out, and this is just me looking at data in the town. This is not me owning property or anything like that. But as far as losing tenants, Brattleboro has such a tight rental market
That's
and
right.
vacancy rate that um, that was Dutch, the dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, looking through the window at us. Um, we have such a tight rental market in this town that I have a feeling even if someone moved next door, you'd have someone ready to move in to
Yeah.
your space, even if someone else left for cheaper rent.
Yeah.
That would be the hope, anyways.
Yeah. It is affordable housing, so
Hmm.
it meets government standards on, people with low to medium incomes.
Right, so it won't be open to just anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
Tell us about another project that came before the board. There were some current concerns about an addition at BMH.
Yes. A group of residents from Maple Street wrote a letter to the DRB, and they were basically saying there's some noise from a previous project
Mm.
with machinery on the building, um, that that wasn't properly mitigated to begin with, and they're also worried about an increase in traffic and the type of traffic involved with bringing in construction vehicles on
Mm-hmm.
on their road. So there was a resident representing this group of neighbors, and she read their concerns, and the board went into deliberate session, and they talked about um, what they could do, because they also said, oh, we didn't get to see these studies, these noise and traffic studies.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that was a legitimate concern. The board decided, and they said, we're going to continue this hearing till next month.
Okay.
So at the next meeting, they're going to reopen the hearing after the neighbors get a chance to look at these studies. And the chairman, James Valenti, he said, I think some of these concerns were addressed in these studies. So why don't you take a look at that, and then we'll come back and talk.
Okay. So that project is basically on hold until the DRB gets to come back to it.
Yeah, and it's an addition on the building. It's in the middle section of the building. They're gonna have a surgical wing. It's gonna be improved working conditions for the folks there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing how that develops. Chris and I are going to head off to break, but we will return in a few moments. We're back with Green Mountain Mornings on KVT Talk, where Brattleboro listens. 39 minutes past the top of the hour, and I'm your host, Olga Peters. Welcome back to my guest, Chris Mays from The Reformer. Hello, Chris.
Thanks. Hey.
And Chris gets a huge thank you because he has come back 2 weeks in a row. Normally, Harmony Birch would be here, but unfortunately, she had a conflict in her schedule and couldn't make it. So thank you, Chris, for pitch hitting for
She's
Harmony.
actually in Belgium. It's pretty
Oh,
cool. I've been looking at her pictures online. It looks
oh,
like she's having
nice.
fun.
So she's on vacation.
Yeah, she's on vacation.
I wasn't going to tell
right now.
folks that, but
Oh, okay.
make it sound like she's a hardworking reporter.
Well, I just thought it was cool. I mean, yeah, I wish I
No,
could
that is
go.
cool. That's very cool. I hope she has a good rest of her trip.
Yeah.
Speaking of vacations and trips and all things touristy, what's happening with the Hermitage these days over in Wilmington and Dover?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Did you hear that in his voice? Everyone, well.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been in contact with the Hermitage every day. They're going through kind of a rough patch right now. They had a bunch of layoffs last week. So the Department of Labor came and they did this thing called a rapid response. And they have these rapid response teams who come out and work with businesses where there's been a lot of layoffs or there's a closure or similar things in nature. And I never knew this. I actually went on the website because I made a call to the Department of Labor and they said, yeah, we sent one of our rapid response teams there, I think. We'll have somebody call you back. And the commissioner called me back. But it was just, I was like, what is this rapid response thing
Yeah.
you speak of? And it's interesting. They have people who go out to the site and they meet with people and they tell them what they can do and they meet with local businesses to see if there's work for these people to do.
Mhm.
Um, so then we also found out on Sunday, some of the people who were there working on work visas from foreign countries, they're no longer working there.
Oh wow.
Some of their visas have expired or their contract has
Mhm.
expired and they're not being renewed. So the Hermitage said that they're allowing these former employees to stay in their housing they offer
Mhm.
until they either go back to their country or find other work locally.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're talking about having an announcement later this week. I don't want to speculate too much, but
Okay.
there has been, like I said last week, there's been talk about members being interested in taking over ownership of the company.
Mhm.
Last week, they announced an interim president, Bob Rubin. He's been the vice president of construction of development since the beginning,
Okay.
and the community has really responded positively to his taking over for now, and people say he's a great guy.
So he's a known entity in the community.
Yeah, he organized the build out of the Green Springs condos in
Okay.
Dover. If you know of those, they're by
I.
Mount Snow.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I know the ones you mean.
Yeah, and I shouldn't forget to mention they're facing foreclosures on a number of properties. The Hermitage Inn, a bunch of land nearby the mountain and all, and some of the inns they've purchased, the golf course.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think you mentioned this in a recent article about us, the folks who are interested in buying out the owner. But what what has led to some of this the financial issues that the Hermitage is facing?
most recently, they've blamed the unseasonably warm weather and the rain and the
Hmm.
bad weather for the layoffs, and they stopped running the lifts as often. They're
Okay.
only going to do it on the weekends, even during President's Week, which came as somewhat of a shock to people working there and
Hmm.
who are members. And they said they've been having some cash flow issues. Previously, in October, they said they had a bad winter season 2 seasons ago, which kind of put them in a bad position. And then they've kind of blamed um, what they saw as a permitting delay with getting their Act 250 permit,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so they were expecting to have that sooner.
Okay.
So that kind of set them back. And then they said they had a slow membership drive, so they didn't have as many members as they thought signing up.
That's too bad because they just were so beautifully showcased in the Bachelor Winter Games.
That's right.
Is it NBC? Is they do the Bachelor? I'm sorry,
I
I'm
forget.
forgetting my networks. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean the inns looked gorgeous with all the wonderful lighting and the set decorations, and
yeah. I don't have cable, so I haven't seen it yet, but I plan on watching it.
I only watched it well because I know Phil Gilpin, who was one of the people who organized a lot of bringing bringing the games here, but I happened to be at a place where they have on demand this week, so
Cool.
you know I might have spent some time this weekend on the couch with the dog watching the Winter Games.
Yeah, I understand. There's a lot of local places showcased in the.
Well, that's what I enjoyed about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, I mean the ends looked beautiful. It's such a shame timing wise.
yeah.
And so, what's the next step for the Hermitage? The Department of Labor has worked with a number of the employees. Are have employees found new work or?
Um, I'm not sure. I
Mm-hmm.
know a few people who haven't. I think it's still pretty early. It
Okay.
was only last week, and it comes as a pretty big shock. Hopefully, there's some jobs that can be filled in the Valley or here in Brattleboro and Bennington.
Mm-hmm.
Both offices of the Department of Labor are working with people. So what they said is it's hit both sides of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
But we don't know what to expect next for the Hermitage,
no,
except for announcement this week.
yeah. Well, the news of the foreclosure, they said that this is a chance to bring everybody to the table and figure out what to do next.
Okay. Well, good luck to them.
So we might see a comeback for the Hermitage Club, you know?
One never knows.
Yeah.
Um, what other stories are you working on right now?
Well, I've been working on this preview for town meeting for all the towns in Windham County, just slowly going through, looking at the articles, trying to make sense of them all.
Good on you.
So I'm hoping to submit that today.
Hmm.
You know, I have a couple more towns to look at.
Any articles that stand out or that caught you by surprise?
Definitely in Townsend.
Okay.
They are talking about hiring a town manager. It's been something they've been discussing for years, from what I understand. And they're also going to talk about contracting with a local law enforcement agency. So they might want more coverage than the Vermont State Police currently gives.
Okay. Excuse me, I should know this, but what does Townsend have now? Do they have a just an assistant or
Yeah.
okay?
Yep.
So they're actually thinking of voting on a town manager. That would be a big step.
Yeah, last year the voters asked the select board to create a committee who would study, you know, what it would cost and what it might look like. So
Hmm.
they did a study of all the different towns around the area and what kinds of forms of government they had.
And how about other towns? Any other surprises or things of interest?
I in Putney and Dummerston, I think they're both looking at purchasing vehicles for their fire departments.
Okay.
Um,
Always a big ticket item.
yeah, Wilmington is talking about this town-wide reappraisal of properties.
Huh.
So they're going to give a big chunk of cash to listers so they can do that work.
Okay.
In Dover, they're going to talk about having a separate bus. Right now, they have the mover bringing students from Dover School to Brattleboro Union High School.
Uh huh.
And along the way, they're picking up anybody who's, you know.
Wants to ride. Yeah.
So one parent had concerns about safety, and it's a full bus, so some kids are having to stand, and they just want to have. They're talking about also Dover School is about to. They're expecting an uptick in students going to Brattleboro, so
Okay.
they're thinking this might make sense to have their own separate bus.
Wow. And do you? I know you don't have the information right in front of you. Do you happen to know how much that would cost? How much they're budgeting for that?
I don't want to say offhand because I'm
Okay.
not sure, but yeah,
Understandable. But yeah,
it'll
that
be
would
in
be
the article.
information. Yeah, it'll be in the article.
Yeah.
Any other towns of note?
No, just some. They're creating some new. Some towns are creating new funds to do upkeep or maintenance or projects.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at their town facilities.
That's smart.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I know you're just starting working on it, but you had mentioned during the break about Wilmington might have to deal with some tax issues.
Oh yeah. Tonight, actually, I'm going to the Twin Valley School Board meeting. It's their last informational meeting, seven
Mm-hmm.
o'clock at the elementary school, and they're going to talk about their budget. And like last year, they're expecting increases for both Wilmington and Whitingham.
Okay.
Last year, Whitingham took a bigger hit, and this year, I believe Wilmington is going to take the bigger hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on a story about that, and how the legislature is looking at an income based property instead of property tax
Mm-hmm.
way of funding education in the state. So
Right, which could change things. It would be interesting. And yeah, I look forward to hearing more about that as that goes forward too.
Yeah.
I think they just held either yesterday or late last week, they held a public hearing at the State House
Yeah.
about what it would mean to move to a income slash property
Yeah.
tax opposed to just the straight property tax education fund.
Yeah.
Big doings.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, as always, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.